G'day Internet and welcome back to another video. Now, you may have heard that the original Xbox recently celebrated its 20th anniversary. Just to make you feel old. Now, I have owned an Xbox in the past. I didn't have one back in the day. I was very much a member of the PC Master Race. But a few years after that, I got introduced to my mate's one who had it all modded and it was running XBMC and stuff like that. And I just thought it was amazing. But I never bought my own until about 5 or 6 years ago. I kind of got into this headspace of collecting everything. And for that Xbox, I must have had, I don't know, about 200 odd games. But then like a couple of years later, I got it in my head that all this stuff was just taking up space. I wasn't playing it all that often. And other than all my 8 and 16-bit consoles, I sold everything else. So I sold my Dreamcast, my GameCube, and my Xbox with all its games. And I still remember as the dude drove out of my driveway thinking, kind of wish I hadn't done that. But with the Xbox's 20th birthday, I thought I would keep an eye out at least on Facebook Marketplace to see if I could pick up another one. And I did. But the first one I bought ended up being a little DOA. After pulling it apart, as would surprise no one, the clock capacitor had gone pert and destroyed the motherboard. It would actually turn on, it just wouldn't turn off. But I did manage to get my money back on that, and it's actually sitting just down there, and it might be a useful spares machine. Actually, it's already proven to be a useful spares machine. We'll get to that in a minute. I then went on hunting and picked up this one right here, which is in not too bad condition. It's got a few scrapes on it and a few marks, and actually it's got more than a few scrapes on top. So I went and picked it up, got all the games that came with it and all the rest of it, and just as I was leaving, the dude turned to me and went, "Oh, by the way, that machine has got a mod chip in it." And of course the badge on the front should have been a giveaway, but I didn't see that at the time. So let's start by taking a look at this particular machine, get an idea of what's installed on it, things like that. I'm going to guess that it's filthy dirty inside. Actually, in fact, I already know it's filthy dirty inside. So we'll tear it to pieces, take a better look at whatever mod chip is in it, and give the thing a thorough good clean. Once that's done, I'm going to look at a bit of an upgrade for in the storage department. So here is the Xbox with a bit of a noisy fan. We might deal with that. I don't actually have a spare, but I think the one in the spares machine is a lot quieter than this. Anyway, it seems to be running a version of XBMC. We've got our normal programs installed, so chimp loaders on there, DVD to Xbox, and XB Petitioner seems to be there, which is actually a little strange, but again, we'll get to that in a minute. And there seems to be a bunch of games already dumped to the hard drive. Now, these are actually, for the most part, the games that also came with it. So whoever's done this has done this more for convenience than anything else, which is actually exactly what I want to do as well. But as far as I can tell, it's a fairly old install. There's nothing in the way of videos or anything on here, I don't think. No. Nope, there's nothing in there. And if we have a look at the file manager, you'll see that we've got our normal 500 meg C drive partition. We have a 4.4 gig E drive partition, a nearly 1 gig F drive, and then this 4.4 gig Q drive, and I have no idea what that actually is. But F drive is obviously where all our games are. Where are we? Back. And E drive seems to be where our apps are, which is all fairly normal. And I think dashboards, well, there's a couple of executables for dashboards at least. So that's kind of what's running on the machine at the moment. So I think we tear the thing to pieces and actually see what's inside. Right, Standard Xbox pulling it apart procedure. We've got a bunch of long Torx screws in the base. You'll notice no feet, but I think I've got a full set on the other machine that we can stick on at the end. Lid off. Did I forget a screw? No? Oh, come on. Nothing like a bit of a thud to get it off. Smaller Torx screws holding it mostly together. There's only 3 of them. Center, and then loosen off the 2 down the side of the DVD. Quick side note, when this machine arrived, about after half an hour of playing around with it, the DVD drive died, and yeah, I said the spares machine had already been a good spares machine. The drive in this was actually one of the original Thomson drives, which are known to fail, so I already pinched the Phillips out of the other one and stuck it in here. Anyway, let's undo IDE, and power. Hard drive out. And DVD out. Now, do you remember the partition sizes that we looked at the beginning? Well, this is actually a 40 gig hard drive. Now, I didn't see enough partitions to actually add up to 40 gigs, so whoever set this up originally honestly didn't do a particularly good job, because there's, what, nearly 30 gig of wasted space on that drive. So here we are inside our very dusty Xbox. Now, I think this is actually a fairly early model, like a 1.0 or a 1.1. We have a CPU fan instead of just a cooler, and that's actually quite warm. One of the jobs I think we'll be doing is replacing some thermal paste. And here is our mod chip. Now, I've done some digging, and this is an Exchanger 2.5. This gives us the ability to load 2 different BIOSes, one smaller 256K one and a larger 512K one. And for the poking around that I've been doing, I've been only using the 512K one. Side note, if anyone knows, in the smaller slot I did load the latest Evo XM8 Plus or whatever the BIOS is, and it still won't see an F drive bigger than 120 gig. No idea why, but the Executor 2 BIOS that's in the larger slot seems to work fine. Other than that, it's a pretty standard Xbox and just quite a bit dusty. So let's continue pulling this thing down to its underwear. Okay, what's next? I think the best bet is to take the majority and blow it with the air compressor just to get the bulk of the dust out. The controller ports are going to need a little bit of extra TLC with, say, a toothbrush. Motherboard definitely needs a clean with IPA and a toothbrush and that kind of thing. I want to do the thermal paste on both the GPU and the CPU. That needs a blowout. I'm going to pull the fan from the spares one to see if it's in a bit better condition than this. And then just kind of give everything a bit of a wipe down. I am going to use the top cover and the front fascia from the other one, but I do want to try and rescue this badge. Because this has got a few scratches on it, and the top one has got a lot of scratches on it, and the spares machine is in a lot better condition. So, air compressor. So I have been told not to try and force the heatsink off the GPU. Yes, I got them round the wrong way before. And the trick is to use something like my hot air gun and heat it up. I've got this set to, what have I got it set to? 150 degrees. Heat up the heatsink and it'll come loose with all its gooey mess. Just taking a quick look at the underside of these heat sinks while I'm cleaning them up. I think someone has actually done new thermal paste on these, but left the old stuff in place, because there's two distinct colours here, a silver and a pink. Well done. Right, so we have the motherboard all cleaned up. These have given a bit of a clean. That's been blown out. That's the fan out of the other one, which I've put a drop of oil into the bearing and cleaned up. I did manage to swap over the front fascia, and I managed to even keep the badge, so this doesn't have any major scratches on it. So I guess the next step really is to just simply put it all back together. I'm trying to remember what order I pulled it apart. Microsoft really didn't want that motherboard going anyway, did they? So we now get to the first bit, I guess, of the main upgrade I want to do on this machine, and that's dropping in an SSD. Now, to do that, you need to use a parallel ATA to SATA adapter. And the one that most people seem to recommend is the StarTech one. So I've got one of those. But the caveat of using, well, any of these SATA adapters is you need to upgrade the IDE cable from the original 40-core regular IDE cable to what's known, I guess, as, well, it's an 80-core cable, also known as Ultra ATA or ATA 133. There's a bunch of different names for it. I knocked this up, as you can see, if you can see there. I actually moved the connector, so this should all fit. So that can go in there, and now I can drop at least the DVD drive in. Now, before I put the hard drive and its caddy back in the machine, quick note. If you've ever soft-modded an Xbox, you know that partway through the process, when you start working on the second drive, you need to do this kind of whole hot swap thing where you quickly unplug the DVD and plug in the new drive, and then the process keeps going. The reason for that is an Xbox will not boot without a DVD drive plugged in. But if you remember, we've got that mod chip in there with a couple of different aftermarket BIOSes in it. So we actually get around that. With those BIOSes, this will happily boot without a DVD drive. So what that means is I can put this whole thing together with the SSD and not have to worry about swapping hard drives and everything later on. Bye-bye old hard drive. Hello, new Kingston 480 gig SSD. And this should drop straight in here, assuming I can get the holes to line up. Where are we? Further down. Right. Cool. There's our SSD mounted. I should now be able to take the StarTAC adapter. Now, it's got a set of jumpers for master-slave cable select. Make sure it's set to master. But that should just drop straight into the back of there. Cool. We're pretty much ready to put this back into the Xbox. I forgot to put the fan back in the Xbox. Let's hope I can still get this in here. And there we go. With the Duke all cleaned up, it turned out pretty good. Right, so what we have now is the Xbox cleaned up and a new blank hard drive. Now, remember I mentioned a minute ago that we now, because we've actually got a mod chip inside, we don't have to do all the usual hot swapping of hard drive and all the rest of it to try and get a soft mod on. The other upshot is that we can simply boot from a burnt disk because obviously the BIOS allows the execution of unsigned code. So what I have here is the Hexen 2021 disk. I also seem to have a copy of Crash Nitro Kart in there. And this will give us the tools to set up the hard drive, install dashboard, and basically do the bulk of the setup. So, link for this will be in the description. Put that in there. We're going to start from bank B, and it should boot that disk. And here we are. It's actually called Heimdall's engineering disk. And what we want to do is we want to go down to number 3, which is TSOP flashed or chipped Xbox tools. We want to go down to chipped or flashed Xbox disk upgrades. And we want to go new, and I'm going to go NTSC Xbox. Quick side note, Microsoft decided to neuter the PAL machines in regards to HD video. So the other upshot of modding an Xbox is you can basically turn it into an NTSC Xbox if you live in PAL land like I do, and that will give us the HD video out as well. But there's a gotcha for that later on. So let's go new disk NTSC Xbox. What is the code? Is it AYBX? Yes. Right. Use this option to build a new hard drive. Okay. Gives you a quick rundown of what XB Petitioner will do after it's formatted and done stuff to the drive. Once you've selected your preferred yada yada yada, it basically tells you how to use XB Petitioner. Yes, if your Xbox is soft modded, this will remove. Yes, I know, because it's not soft modded. Unleash has detected a new hard disk. Do you want to format? Yes, so it's trigger, trigger, and start. Trigger, trigger, and start again to confirm. Do you have an F drive? Yes. It's actually, do you want an F drive? but obviously we do because the F drive is the partition that is going to become our huge one. Do you have a G drive? Both triggers and back to skip. I don't want a G drive. I just want one big partition. I don't want it all split up. Expert has finished preparing the drive. Both triggers and start to continue. Now we'll sit here for a second. It hasn't crashed. It's just thinking. Right. It'll then go back to this dashboard and it'll sit there for a minute. And there we go. And it's starting to install all the software. Right. It is now booted into XB Partitioner. Now it's already gone and set my F drive as 440 gigabytes, which is what I want. If you want to, you can press A and it will cycle through a bunch of different options. See, now we've got a G drive, we've split the two evenly, or only 120, but I want the full 440 gig. So I press start to write that, yes to confirm, it's writing the partition table, and that's it. We hit back, and we're back to here. What we want to do now is we want to shut the Xbox down, initiate clean system shutdown, okay, clears out all the old cache, opens the drive, we can take the Hexen disk out, and we go okay. And in theory, it should boot. No, I shut it down, didn't I? Right, turn it back on. Select bank B, which on this chip I can actually boot directly by hitting the eject button when I turn the machine on, instead of going through that little menu. This should now boot into Unleash X desktop dashboard. And there we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the skin. Where are we? System, skins to my preferred one, which is green shapes, back, which is this. So as it currently stands, we now have a modded Xbox, we've got our basic software installed, and we're kind of ready to go. I'm going to now just quickly do some changes on the menu to set it up the way I like it. And then we're going to look at actually using this with in HD video. So I'll try and show some comparisons. So after a little bit of tidy up, the main thing we want to do now is get games on the hard drive. And there's two ways of doing that. If you've got the files sitting on your computer, you can FTP to them. It even gives you the IP address just here. So on my network, it's 192.168.20.39. Username password is Xbox. Browse to the F drive, upload your files, done. The other way is to use DVD to Xbox. So if I, for instance, grab my Crash Bandicoot disc and drop it in, and we can go to Applications, DVD to Xbox, copy DVD, CD to hard disk. That's obviously what we want. Just give it a sec for the drive to do its thing. And I want to stick it in F drive games. Crash Nitro Kart, start to proceed. And it will then copy all the files from the DVD to the hard drive. Now, the upshot of this is basically twofold. One is simply convenience. The other one is that games will load a bit quicker off the hard drive than off the original disk. And we're simply talking because the DVD drives in these aren't the fastest in the world. We've got now an SSD which reduces seek time, so on and so forth. So it just kind of speeds up the whole process of launching and playing a game. Once finished, it'll get to here, press start, and it, well, popped out the disc. And we can exit back to the dashboard. And if we go into games, we have Crash Nitro Kart. I keep calling it just simply Crash Bandicoot. So if you haven't been able to tell, up until this point, I've simply had this plugged into the screen via composite. And we all know that composite is not the greatest video signal you can get. The Xbox certainly had a big trick up its sleeve, and that was the ability to plug into a screen using component. And I have a component cable just here. But, quick side note, far as I can tell, online, new these days, the only cables you can get are these cheap, thin ones from eBay, and they're all the same. I went hunting online, both new and secondhand, for either an original Microsoft cable or perhaps a Monster one. Couldn't find one anywhere, so this is kind of your only option at the moment. They're not horrible. The image quality that I've been playing around with this, I've seen better, but I've certainly seen worse. Other options are something like the pound HDMI cable, which basically takes the component and converts it into HDMI. As a tip, on my old Xbox, I bought the hyperconversion of that, and it was terrible. It introduced a whole bunch of noise to the signal, so I wouldn't recommend the Hypercon one. Anyway, so as you can see, hopefully, is not the sharpest picture in the world. So before we set it up to use component, I want to give you, or try to give you, a better look at what this looks like just through the composite video as a comparison. So here's the start of Crash Bandicoot, just a quick race. And off we go. And hopefully you can see that, I mean, the colours aren't horrible, but it's very washed out, it's very blurry, and, well, it feels like a composite signal, to be honest. Whoop. So what we're going to do now, I'm concentrating too much on the game. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit out of this and I'm going to set it up for HD video. So I've plugged the component cables in, and one or two things is going to happen. Either it's just going to go, hey, you've plugged in component cables and it's working and I've enabled HD, or it's not. It's going to be pretty obvious because the screen's going to still be as blurry as composite. Now, on this particular instance, it has done that. But when I've been playing around with this over the last week or so, it didn't. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and there's a gotcha here. If we go down to, where are we? Xbox Admin, System Settings, and scroll all the way down to Video Display, you'll see here that it's all switched to yes. But if you change it here in Unleash X's settings menu, I've had it not make the change, basically. So I'm going to back out, and I want to go to dashboards, and I want to switch to the original MS dashboard. So here's the original classic MS dashboard, and if we go down to settings, video, and you want to set these to yes or no, depending on what you want. I've read instances where switching on 1080i can cause problems. Haven't experienced myself, but at the end of the day, there's only like, I don't know, 5 maybe games that support 1080i and will quite happily run in 720p. So it's been recommended to me to only turn on 480 and 720. So if you're trying to turn on HD and it's not working for you, try dropping into the MS dashboard and setting it here. So here we are back in Nitro Kart, and I'm hoping that even with the camera simply pointed at the screen, you can tell the difference. The reason I chose Nitro Kart is it is a game that supports 720p. I don't know how many there are. I think there's about 30 or 40 games that do support the higher resolutions. So I'm hoping you can see the difference, and I will try and put up some comparisons.
I need no loot person.
So there we go. That is now my slightly modded and improved Xbox, which wasn't too bad for considering what I picked it up for, which was reasonably cheap. And I'm especially happy that I actually got a Duke controller with it too. Big hands. Now, let me be quite clear. I am no expert on the Xbox. You may have already gathered this. So this wasn't meant to be, by any stretch of the imagination, some kind of tutorial, although it kind of ended up a bit like that. So I'm going to put some links down in the descriptions that if you are more interested, please go check them out. The first one is MVG's Xbox playlist. This covers kind of almost like the evolution of modding, because he's got videos going back years. And is just, if you have any interest in the Xbox, that whole playlist is worth watching. I'm also going to put a link to Mr. Mario, I think his name is, to his playlist as well. Now, which is more tutorial based. Now, be aware in both those playlists, because development on the Xbox has been going on for so long, some of those older videos are no longer useful, right? Because things have changed, processes have changed, technology's changed, etc., etc. So, given that, also down in the description will be a recent video from Macho Nacho, who normally does handhelds and stuff, but he did a 20th anniversary video just recently on completely modding a stock Xbox. So that includes things like installing the chip, installing a really nice HDMI mod, which I might do eventually, installing a new hard drive, setting up the software, the whole lot. So if you are starting from scratch now, given that it's December 2021, go check out that video. It's really worthwhile. But either way, I'm actually pretty happy with what I have come out with. It has nice video quality through the component. I've got the ability now to just simply dump games to a reasonably fast, large hard drive. Just very quickly, the original hard drive did actually already have a bunch of games dumped to it. They're games that I've got the discs for anyway, and it was also full of just, well, honestly, some pretty crap games. Put it this way, Top Spin was on there. Now, I actually don't know if Top Spin is a bad tennis game or not, but it seems to be a game that you can't even give away, and so I don't know if that's because it's terrible or because there was a million copies of it produced. Let me know in the comments if it's a good game or not. But for now, that will pretty much do it. I now have an Xbox back in the collection, which I'm very happy about. If you did like the video, click like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube-y stuff if you would like to help support the channel. I am on Patreon, just like these wonderful people just here. But until then, I will see you in the next one.